Before I start, make sure you hit the subscribe button. The moment shattered like glass, 1 second of inappropriate laughter that would collapse the carefully constructed reality I'd been living in. They say a single grain of sand can trigger an avalanche. For me, it was a giggle. One careless, reflexive giggle that would expose the fault lines in my marriage I never knew existed. 3 hours earlier, my morning had started like any other Tuesday. I'd kissed Alexander goodbye as he slept, his powerful frame sprawled across our California king, the sheets tangled around his waist. At 36, my husband still looked like the financial wunderkind who'd graced the cover of Forbes 5 years ago when his tech investment firm crossed the billion-dollar threshold. Dark hair perpetually tousled, jaw eternally shadowed with stubble no matter how recently he'd shaved, and those eyes, deep blue and calculating, always seeing 10 steps ahead. "You don't have to go in today," he'd mumbled, half asleep, reaching for my wrist as I slipped away. "Work from home. I'll have my meetings moved." I'd smiled, extracting myself gently. "Can't. Quarterly presentation to the board. I've been preparing for weeks." Alexander had sighed, releasing me with reluctance. "Dinner tonight, then. I'll make reservations at Loe's." That was Alexander in a nutshell, a man who believed every problem could be solved with enough money and influence. Need a table at a 3-Michelin-star restaurant with a 6-month waiting list? Consider it handled. Want to fly to Paris for breakfast? The jet would be fueled and waiting. I'd never wanted that life. When we met 4 years ago, I was a marketing director at a mid-sized agency, passionate about my work and fiercely independent. Our worlds shouldn't have collided, me in my sensible heels and him with his collection of sports cars worth more than my parents' house. But collide they did, at a charity gala where I was volunteering and he was the primary donor. Alexander had pursued me relentlessly, with the same strategic intensity he applied to acquisitions. And despite my resistance to becoming another trophy on a billionaire's shelf, I'd fallen in love with the man beneath the wealth, the one who stayed up late helping his sister with her college applications, who remembered how I took my coffee, who listened when I spoke about my dreams as if they were as important as his empire. We'd been married for 2 years now, and I'd insisted on keeping my job, my name, my identity. Alexander had agreed, though I sometimes caught a flicker of something in his eyes when I mentioned work, possessiveness, perhaps, or simple bewilderment that I'd choose fluorescent lighting and office politics over the gilded cage he'd built for us. "The Danvers presentation needs another pass," said Colin, leaning over my cubicle wall and interrupting my reminiscence. Colin had started at the agency 6 months ago, a creative director with an impressive portfolio and an even more impressive ego. Tall, with sandy hair and perpetually rolled-up sleeves, he had the casual confidence of someone who'd never doubted his place in the world. "I already sent it to production," I replied, glancing up from my computer. "Well, you send it," he countered, dropping a folder on my desk. "The tagline isn't working. I made some changes." I flipped through his notes, annoyance flickering. "These aren't minor tweaks, Colin. This is a complete conceptual overhaul. The presentation is in 3 hours. That's plenty of time, baby." He grinned, that infuriating, lopsided smile that charmed clients and irritated me equally. "You're the best we've got. If anyone can make it happen, it's you." I don't know why I giggled. Perhaps it was the absurdity of his confidence, or the casual endearment that should have offended my professional sensibilities but somehow just seemed ridiculous coming from him. Whatever the reason, a laugh escaped me, a light, dismissive, but unmistakably amused. And that's when I felt it, a shift in the air, a sudden absence of sound as conversations throughout the open office faltered. I looked up to see Alexander standing at the entrance to my cubicle, a surprise lunch in hand, his expression unreadable except for the dangerous stillness in his eyes. How long had he been standing there? Long enough to see Colin leaning into my space, to hear the casual baby drop from his lips, to witness my inexplicable giggle in response. "Alexander," I said, rising quickly, my voice too high, too brittle. "I didn't know you were coming by." My husband's gaze never left Colin, who straightened slowly, the smile fading from his face as he registered the expensive suit, the watch worth more than his annual salary, the palpable aura of power. Clearly, Alexander replied, his voice glacial. He set the lunch container on my desk with precise, controlled movements. I thought you might appreciate something better than whatever passes for food in your cafeteria. I didn't realize you were, otherwise entertained. Colin extended his hand. Colin Reeves. Creative Director. You must be the husband I've heard so much about. Alexander looked at the offered hand as if it were a particularly distasteful insect before slowly, deliberately taking it. I watched Colin flinch imperceptibly as my husband's grip tightened. Alexander Blackwood, he replied, the name falling like a gavel. CEO of Blackwood Ventures. And I don't believe I've heard anything about you. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet. Around us, my co-workers pretended fascination with their screens, though I knew every ear was straining to catch this unexpected drama. Colin and I worked together, I explained quickly. He was just discussing changes to the Danvers presentation. Is that what they're calling it now? Alexander's smile was razor-sharp, his eyes never leaving Colin's face. How fascinating. Mr. Blackwood, Colin began, rubbing his hand after Alexander released it. I assure you. I'm not interested in your assurances, Alexander cut him off, his voice so soft it barely carried, yet somehow more threatening for its restraint. What I am interested in is having lunch with my wife. Alone. Colin nodded, backing away. Of course. The presentation changes can wait. He glanced at me, a silent question in his eyes, are you okay, before retreating to his office. In the suffocating silence that followed, Alexander turned to me, that beautiful face I knew so well now transformed by something I'd never seen directed at me before, a jealousy, cold and calculating. So, he said quietly. That's why you've been so insistent on keeping this job. And in that moment, I knew our marriage was about to enter uncharted territory. The look in Alexander's eyes promised consequences I couldn't begin to imagine. Before I continue, kindly hit the subscribe button. Alexander, it's not what you think, I said, my voice barely above a whisper as curious eyes darted in our direction before quickly looking away. Then enlighten me. His words were ice, his posture rigid as he gestured toward my office door. Perhaps somewhere more private. I nodded, leading him to the small conference room adjacent to my workspace. As soon as the door closed behind us, I turned to face him, but Alexander was already pacing, his movements precise and controlled like a panther in too small a cage. For years, he said quietly. For years together, and I've never seen you look at me the way you just looked at him. What are you talking about? He's just a coworker. A coworker who calls you a baby. Alexander's voice remained low, but the intensity behind it made me flinch. A coworker who stands too close, who makes you laugh with such ease. I crossed my arms defensively. You're overreacting. Colin is new, he's like that with everyone. The baby-oo thing is just his way of talking. And your giggle? Is that just your way of talking? Alexander stepped closer, his cologne enveloping me, sandalwood and something darker, more expensive. In the 3 years I pursued you, in the 2 years we've been married, I have never once heard that sound from you. Not when I proposed in Santorini. Not when I surprised you with the cottage in Vermont you'd always wanted. Never. My heart hammered against my ribs. This is ridiculous. You're making something out of nothing. Alexander's laugh was hollow. Am I? He ran a hand through his hair, mussing the perfect styling. Do you have any idea what it's like watching you fight to keep this job? Watching you refuse the life I could give you, insisting on your independence, your career? I told myself it was one of the things I loved about you, your drive, your ambition. But now I wonder if there were other motivations. That's not fair, I protested, heat rising to my cheeks. I've always been honest with you. My career matters to me. It's part of who I am. And who exactly are you? He asked, his gaze traveling over me as if seeing me for the first time. Because the woman I married wouldn't flutter her eyelashes at some middle management creative with delusions of grandeur. The accusation stung, igniting a spark of anger. I wasn't flattering anything. And even if I was, which I wasn't, since when do you get to police my expressions? My laughter. Alexander's eyes narrowed. Since you became my wife. 5 simple words that crystallized everything wrong with our marriage in one breath. I became your partner, I corrected, my voice shaking. Not your possession. Something flickered across his face, hurt, perhaps, quickly masked by that impenetrable billionaire facade he wore like armor. Is that how you see our marriage? As some kind of corporate merger? A business arrangement? No, I sighed, suddenly exhausted. But sometimes I wonder if that's how you see it. Alexander moved to the window, looking out at the skyline dominated by the Blackwood Tower in the distance. When we met, you were different from anyone I'd ever known. You didn't care about my money, my connections. You challenged me. You made me work for your attention. I remembered those early days, Alexander sending elaborate gifts I'd return with polite notes declining his interest, him showing up at charity events I coordinated, eventually volunteering his time rather than just writing checks when he realized that would impress me more. You pursued me relentlessly, I said softly. Because you were worth pursuing. He turned back to me, the hard edges softening slightly. Do you remember our third date? I smiled despite myself. The power went out at that overpriced restaurant you'd reserved months in advance. The chef was having a meltdown. And instead of letting me arrange another venue, you suggested we buy sandwiches from the bodega and eat them on a bench in Central Park. It was pouring rain, I added. We found shelter in that ridiculous tourist horse carriage. The driver took pity on us. For a moment, we were back there, huddled together as rain drummed on the canopy, eating mediocre sandwiches and laughing about how this would make a better story than any 5-star meal could have provided. The memory hung between us, a reminder of simpler times before penthouses and private jets, before the weight of his empire and my need for independence created this chasm. I fell in love with you that night, Alexander said quietly. Soaking wet, eating a turkey sandwich that probably violated several health codes, you looked at me like I was just a man. Not a balance sheet. Not a last name. Just me. The confession broke something inside me. Alexander? And now? His vulnerability vanished, replaced by that calculating stare that had built his fortune. Now you look at some insignificant creative director that way. Like he's just a man. That's not. I've indulged this career fantasy of yours, he continued, his tone shifting to something colder, more determined. I respected your wishes, despite knowing you could do so much more. Be so much more. With me. With my resources. I stiffened. My career isn't a fantasy. No? Then why are you still in the same position you were in when we met? Why haven't you advanced? Grown? Is it possible, love, that you're staying here not for professional fulfillment but for other satisfactions? The insinuation landed like a slap. How dare you? How dare I question why my wife giggles like a schoolgirl when another man calls her baby? Alexander's voice remained controlled, but his eyes blazed. I dare because I've invested everything in us. Everything. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from my boss, board waiting in conference room A, presentation starting. I have to go, I said, gathering the remnants of my composure. We can finish this conversation at home. Alexander straightened, adjusting his already perfect tie. Actually, I don't think we will. He checked his watch, a casual glance at a timepiece worth more than my annual salary. I've made a decision. It's time for some changes. A chill ran through me. What does that mean? His smile didn't reach his eyes. Go give your presentation. Dazzle them with your mediocre campaigns for mediocre products. Tonight, we'll discuss your resignation. My what? This little experiment in independence is over, he said, opening the conference room door. It's time you took your rightful place as my wife. Only my wife. As he walked away, leaving me frozen in shock, I couldn't help but wonder, had I ever really known the man I married? And more terrifyingly, what was he capable of when he felt betrayed? The boardroom felt impossibly large as I stood at the front, 20 pairs of eyes fixed on me while my presentation flickered on the screen behind. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears, professional, confident, utterly disconnected from the turmoil churning inside me. Which is why our proposed rebrand will increase market engagement by an estimated 32% in the first quarter alone. I clicked to the next slide, stealing a glance at my phone on the table. 3 missed calls from Alexander. 2 text messages I hadn't dared to open. Questions? I asked, concluding the presentation with a smile that felt plastered onto my face. As the board members nodded with approval and my boss gave me a subtle thumbs up, I felt nothing. No pride in my work, no satisfaction at a job well done. Only the echo of Alexander's words, "This little experiment in independence is over." Had I been naive to believe I could maintain my own identity after marrying into such wealth and power? Maybe the comfortable illusion of equality in our marriage had been just that, an illusion, carefully maintained until the first real test. "Brilliant work as always," said Mr. Danvers himself, shaking my hand firmly as the meeting dispersed. "Your agency continues to impress us." I thanked him automatically, gathering my materials while the room emptied. Only when the door closed behind the last board member did I allow myself to sink into a chair, hands trembling as I finally unlocked my phone. First message from Alexander: "Car waiting for you downstairs at 5. Don't make me come find you again." Second message, sent 20 minutes later: "I've called James. He'll be drafting your resignation letter. All you'll need to do is sign." James. Alexander's personal attorney, the man who had drawn up our prenuptial agreement, a document I'd barely skimmed before signing, believing our love transcended such practicalities. How foolish I seemed now, remembering Alexander's satisfied smile as the ink dried. A soft knock on the door startled me. Colin entered, his expression unusually subdued. "That was impressive," he said, closing the door behind him. "Especially considering, well, everything." I straightened, smoothing invisible wrinkles from my skirt. "It's fine. Just a misunderstanding." Colin leaned against the conference table, too close for comfort. "Your husband didn't seem to think so. Pretty intense guy. He has a lot of pressure on him." I found myself defending Alexander instinctively, even as his controlling ultimatum burned in my mind. "Right. Billionaire problems." Colin's sarcasm was thinly veiled. "Look, I wanted to apologize. I didn't mean to cause trouble between you two." "You didn't," I said too quickly. "Alexander and I are fine." Colin's eyes, hazel with flecks of gold, I noticed for the first time, studied me with uncomfortable perception. "Are you?" Because from where I was standing, it looked like he was pretty worked up over a harmless nickname. "It's complicated," I sighed, gathering my laptop and notes. "Alexander is protective." "Protective or possessive?" "There's a difference." Colin's voice softened. "I've seen this before. Powerful men who think their wives are extensions of their asset portfolios." The observation hit too close to home, forcing me to confront the growing realization that perhaps Alexander did see me that way, as something acquired, owned, displayed. "You don't know him," I countered, though even to my ears the defense sounded hollow. "Maybe not," Colin conceded, "but I know what I saw. And I know that you're the most talented marketing director in this agency. It would be a shame to lose you because your husband can't handle you having a life outside his control." My head snapped up. "What makes you think?" "Office gossip travels fast," Colin shrugged. "Apparently your husband was overheard saying something about a resignation letter." Heat rushed to my face. The humiliation of my private life becoming office fodder added fresh fuel to my simmering anger. I haven't decided anything," I stammered. Colin's expression softened. "Look, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have interfered. It's just..." He hesitated, running a hand through his sandy hair. "I admire you. Your work, your perspective. This place would be much duller without you. The compliment, simple and professional, somehow meant more than all of Alexander's extravagant praise about my beauty or charm. Colin saw me as a colleague, a professional equal. When was the last time Alexander had acknowledged that part of me? My phone buzzed again, Alexander's car service app, notifying me the vehicle had arrived downstairs. I have to go, I said, gathering my things. For what it's worth, Colin said as I reached the door, whatever you decide, make sure it's your choice. Not his. The words followed me like a shadow as I descended in the elevator, crossed the lobby, and slid into the waiting black Bentley. The driver, Dimitri, another of Alexander's loyal employees, nodded silently as he pulled away from the curb. Where are we going? I asked, noticing we weren't heading toward our penthouse. Mr. Blackwood asked me to bring you to the helipad. The chopper is waiting to take you to the Hamptons estate. The Hamptons. Our secluded summer property, isolated from neighbors and accessible only by helicopter or boat. A beautiful prison. I didn't pack anything, I protested weakly. Mr. Blackwood had Ms. Chen prepare everything you'll need, Dimitri replied, referring to our housekeeper. Of course he had. Alexander's efficiency was legendary, his ability to anticipate and eliminate obstacles unparalleled. It had been charming when applied to surprising me with perfectly planned dates. It seemed sinister now, deployed to remove me from my workplace, my independence. As the car wove through Manhattan traffic, I opened my purse, fingers closing around my personal cell phone, the one Alexander didn't monitor, the one whose bill I still insisted on paying myself. A small symbol of the independence I'd fought to maintain. I stared at it, Colin's words echoing, make sure it's your choice. Not his. In that moment, I made a decision that would change everything, one that would either save my marriage or destroy it completely. Before I continue, kindly hit that subscribe button. Stop the car, please. Dimitri's eyes flickered to mine in the rearview mirror. I said stop the car. My voice came out steadier than I expected, considering how violently my heart hammered against my ribs. Mr. Blackwood was very clear about. I don't care what Mr. Blackwood was clear about. I leaned forward, meeting his gaze directly. Either stop this car right now, or I'll call the police and report that I'm being transported against my will. Dimitri hesitated, loyalty to his employer warring with the very real possibility I wasn't bluffing. After a long moment, he sighed and pulled over to the curb. Mrs. Blackwood, please. He's already unsettled. Thank you for your concern, Dimitri, I said, gathering my purse and briefcase. Please tell my husband I'll be home later. I have some things to take care of first. He won't like this, Dimitri warned, but made no move to stop me as I opened the door. No, I agreed, stepping out onto the sidewalk. He won't. As the Bentley reluctantly pulled away, I stood for a moment on the busy Manhattan street, suddenly dizzy with the weight of my defiance. In 5 years together, I had never directly opposed Alexander's wishes like this. Our disagreements had always been theoretical, resolved with compromises that, looking back, usually ended with me yielding to his preferences while believing I'd made my own choice. My phone buzzed in my hand, Alexander. I declined the call and texted instead. I'm not coming to the Hamptons. We need to talk, but first I need space to think. We'll be home tonight. His response was immediate, where are you? I didn't answer, turning instead toward the small cafe on the corner. I needed coffee, silence, and time to sort through the chaos of my thoughts. The cafe was nearly empty, the afternoon lull between lunch and after-work crowds. I ordered a latte and settled into a corner booth, opening my laptop with shaking hands. 3 more calls from Alexander, all declined. 2 texts demanding to know my location. Finally, a message that chilled me despite the warm mug between my palms. Don't make me find you. You know I can. And I did know. Alexander's resources were vast, his network extensive. If he wanted to locate me, it would take only a few calls, a few favors collected. The realization that my husband might actually track me like a missing possession sent a wave of clarity washing over me. This wasn't love. This was ownership. I opened my email and found what I expected, a message from James, Alexander's attorney, with my pre-drafted resignation letter attached. The cold, formal language outlined my decision to leave my position effective immediately to focus on family priorities. Family priorities. The phrase caught in my throat. Alexander and I had discussed children, hypothetically, someday, but his recent behavior made me wonder if that had been his plan all along. Get me pregnant, ensure I was completely dependent on him, erase any identity beyond Alexander Blackwood's wife and the mother of his children. My finger hovered over the delete button when a new email notification appeared, from Colin. The subject line read simply, "Are you okay?" I hesitated before opening it. "Heard you left in a hurry. Just checking you're all right." No pressure to respond, but if you need anything, a friendly ear, a professional reference, or just someone to remind you how talented you are, I'm here. See? The simple kindness in his message brought unexpected tears to my eyes. When was the last time anyone had asked if I was okay without an agenda? When had Alexander last inquired about my well-being without immediately suggesting how he could fix whatever was wrong? I closed my eyes, memories flooding back. The early days with Alexander had been intoxicating, his intensity, his unwavering focus on me, his desire to give me the world. I'd mistaken his possessiveness for passion, his control for care. Or perhaps they had been genuine in the beginning, before I became another acquisition, another trophy in his collection. My phone rang again, not Alexander this time, but my sister Kate. "Hey," I answered, relief flooding my voice at this connection to my pre-Alexander life. "What the hell is going on?" Kate demanded without preamble. "Alexander just called me asking if you were with me. He sounds frantic." My stomach dropped. "He's calling my family now. He said you disappeared after work, that you're not answering his calls, that he's worried about you. Are you in trouble? Do you need help?" The concern in her voice nearly broke me. "I'm fine. We had a disagreement. I needed some space." "A disagreement about what?" Kate pressed. The Alexander I no doesn't get frantic over a simple argument. I struggled to explain without sounding paranoid. "He showed up at my office unexpectedly today. Overheard a coworker call me baby, just a casual thing, nothing inappropriate, and completely overreacted. He's demanding I quit my job." Kate's silence spoke volumes. "What?" I asked. "This isn't the first time, is it?" she said quietly. "The controlling behavior, I mean." I opened my mouth to deny it, then stopped, memories surfacing, Alexander suggesting I change outfits before events. Alexander questioning my late nights at the office. Alexander upgrading my friends list by introducing me to the wives of his business associates while my college friendships mysteriously dissolved from lack of time. It wasn't always this obvious, I admitted. "You know what this is, right?" Kate's voice hardened. "This is textbook isolating behavior. First your friends, now your job. Soon it'll be family. He would never keep me from you," I protested, but even as I said it, doubt crept in. Would the Alexander I saw today hesitate to cut me off from anyone who encouraged my independence? "Listen to me," Kate said urgently. "Come to my place tonight. We'll figure this out together." As tempting as her offer was, something held me back. I can't run away from this. Whatever happens, I need to face it directly. "At least tell me where you are," Kate pleaded. "So I know you're safe." "I'm at Caffeine Corner on 52nd. Just thinking." "Stay there." "I'm coming to you." "Kate, you don't have to. I'm already getting my coat." 30 minutes. After we hung up, I stared into my cooling coffee, trying to imagine a path forward. Divorce seemed unthinkable, not just because of what I still felt for Alexander, but because of the sheer complexity of disentangling my life from his. The prenup I'd signed would leave me with next to nothing, and Alexander had enough legal firepower to make the process excruciating. but continuing as we were seemed equally impossible. I couldn't surrender my identity, my career, my independence to appease his insecurity. Lost in thought, I didn't notice the cafe door open until a shadow fell across my table. Looking up, expecting Kate, I instead found myself staring into the stormy blue eyes of my husband. Alexander stood perfectly still, impeccably dressed as always, not a hair out of place. Only the muscle ticking in his jaw and the whiteness of his knuckles as he gripped his phone betrayed his fury. "How did you find me?" I whispered, though I already knew. My earlier text to Kate. He must have somehow accessed my phone records. "Did you really think you could just walk away from me?" His voice was soft, controlled, but vibrating with barely contained rage. "That I wouldn't move heaven and earth to find you." "I wasn't walking away," I said, conscious of the barista watching us nervously from behind the counter. "I just needed space to think." "Think about what?" Alexander slid into the booth across from me, his presence filling the small space until I could barely breathe. "About how to humiliate me further. First I find you flirting with that nobody at your office, then you defy me directly by dismissing my driver, and now I discover you've been conspiring with your sister behind my back." "Conspiring?" I repeated incredulously. "She's my sister, Alexander. And I wasn't flirting with Colin. You're seeing things that aren't there because you're so desperate to control every aspect of my life." The words escaped before I could censor them, hanging in the air between us like a gauntlet thrown. For a moment, Alexander looked genuinely stunned, as if no one had ever spoken to him this way. Then his expression hardened into something I didn't recognize, something cold and calculating that sent a chill through me. "Is that what you think?" he asked quietly. "That I want to control you? What else would you call demanding I resign from my job because you're jealous of a coworker who means nothing to me?" Alexander leaned forward, his eyes never leaving mine. "I'd call it protecting what's mine." The possessiveness in those words should have repulsed me. Instead, some traitorous part of me responded to the raw intensity behind them, the absolute certainty with which Alexander claimed me. "I'm not yours," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. "I'm not a possession, Alexander." "No?" He reached across the table, taking my left hand in his, thumb brushing over the enormous diamond he'd placed there 2 years ago. "Then why do you still wear my ring?" Before I could answer, the cafe door opened again, and Kate burst in, her eyes widening when she saw Alexander sitting across from me. "Well," she said tightly, approaching our table. "This is cozy." Alexander didn't look up, his gaze still fixed on me. "Your sister and I are having a private conversation, Catherine. Your interruption isn't welcome." Kate's eyebrows shot up. "My interruption? You're the one who tracked her down like she's a runaway pet." "Kate, please," I began, but Alexander cut me off. "This is between my wife and me," he said, finally turning to face my sister. "I appreciate your concern, but it's misplaced." "Is it?" Kate challenged, crossing her arms. "Because from where I'm standing, you look like every other controlling, wealthy husband who can't handle his wife having a mind of her own." Alexander's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "You've always had a flair for drama, Catherine. It must run in the family. And you've always been a manipulative bastard," Kate shot back. "My sister was too blinded by your charm to see it, but I've had your number from day one." I stood abruptly, unable to bear the tension another second. "Stop it, both of you. You're making a scene." "Come home with me," Alexander said, his tone softening as he looked at me. "Whatever issues we have, we can work them out together. Privately." "Don't," Kate warned. "Come with me instead. Just for tonight. Give yourself space to think clearly, away from his influence." They stood on either side of me, and my past and my present, independence and security, freedom and passion, both waiting for my choice. In that moment, my phone buzzed with a new message. I glanced down automatically, expecting another demand from Alexander, but the name that flashed on the screen sent a jolt through me. "Colin, just heard something disturbing about your husband. Call me ASAP." It's important. Alexander's eyes narrowed as he caught the name on my screen. Still pretending he's just a colleague, he asked, his voice dangerously soft. And I realized that whatever decision I made next wouldn't just determine my evening's destination, it would set the course for the rest of my life. 3 pairs of eyes fixed on me, Alexander's stormy blue, Kate's concerned brown, and through the digital window of my phone screen, Colin's message glowing accusingly. "Let me see that," Alexander said, reaching for my phone. I instinctively pulled back, clutching it to my chest. No. That single refusal hung between us, more damning than any accusation. Alexander stilled, his expression hardening into the mask he wore in business negotiations. "So that's how it is," he said softly. "You're choosing secrets." "Choosing him." "I'm choosing myself," I countered, finding strength in my own voice. "And my right to privacy." The cafe had emptied except for the barista, who was studiously wiping the same spot on the counter, pretending not to eavesdrop on our unfolding drama. "Come on," Kate said, touching my arm gently. "Let's go. You can stay with me tonight." Alexander's laugh was cold, humorless. "Running away won't fix this. Whatever game you're playing, whatever fantasy you're indulging with your office romance." "There is no office romance," I exploded, months of building resentment finally bursting free. "That's the problem, Alexander. You've constructed this entire narrative in your head where I'm betraying you, where I can't possibly want a career for its own sake, where any man who speaks to me must be a threat. You don't see me anymore, you just see reflections of your own insecurities." The raw truth of my words seemed to physically strike him. For a fleeting moment, the imperious billionaire facade cracked, revealing the man I'd fallen in love with, vulnerable, uncertain. "I see you," he said quietly. "Better than anyone. I see what you could be if you weren't wasting your talents in that mediocre agency. I see the life we could have if you'd just let go of this stubborn attachment to proving you don't need me." "That's not what my career is about," I said, but a tiny voice inside whispered, "Isn't it? Hadn't I clung to my job partly to prove I wasn't defined by my marriage, by Alexander's wealth?" My phone buzzed again. Colin calling now, not just texting. Alexander's eyes flicked to the screen. "Answer it," he challenged, his voice deadly calm. "Put it on speaker. Let's all hear what your colleague has to say that's so urgent." Kate started to protest, but I held up my hand, a strange certainty settling over me. Whatever Colin had discovered, whatever was about to be revealed, it was time for truth. "All of it," I answered, putting the call on speaker. "Colin, you're on with me, my husband, and my sister. What's so important?" A pause, then Colin's voice, hesitant. "I wasn't expecting an audience." "Consider us all very interested in what you have to say," Alexander replied, his tone glacial. "Particularly what a disturbing the information you've discovered about me." Another pause. I could almost see Colin weighing his options, deciding how to proceed. "I was approached by a man today," he finally said. "After you left. He offered me $50,000 for information about your relationship." My breath caught. "What?" He said he was a private investigator working for Alexander Blackwood, gathering evidence for a potential divorce case. He especially wanted to know if we were involved. The blood drained from my face as I looked up at Alexander. "You hired someone to spy on me?" Alexander's expression remained impassive, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. "Nonsense. I would never use such crude methods." "He had credentials," Colin continued. "Business cards. He knew details about the agency, about you. About your marriage." "What was his name?" Kate demanded. "Reynolds. Jack Reynolds." Alexander's face went completely still, a stillness I recognized from the rare occasions when he'd been blindsided in business. "Describe him." Colin did. "Older man, salt and pepper hair, expensive suit, slight limp in his right leg." "Hammond," Alexander said, almost to himself. "Who?" I asked. "Jeffrey Hammond." He's used that alias before. Alexander's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something I never expected: fear. He doesn't work for me. He works for my stepbrother, Vincent. Your stepbrother? What would he want with control of Blackwood Ventures? Alexander cut me off, already pulling out his own phone. Vincent has been trying to leverage his way onto the board for years. If he could prove infidelity, create enough scandal around my marriage. My mind reeled. You have a morality clause in your company charter. Alexander nodded grimly, punching numbers into his phone. If I'm found morally compromised, control reverts to the board, where Vincent has been cultivating allies. He put the phone to his ear. James? I need security at my wife's workplace immediately. Hammond's making a play. As Alexander stepped away to continue his call, I turned back to my phone. Colin? Are you still there? Yes, he answered, his voice strained. Look, I don't know what's happening, but this guy felt wrong. Dangerous. When I refused his offer, he implied he could make things difficult for me. For you. Thank you, I said, truly meaning it. For warning me. For not taking his money. Of course, Colin replied, surprise evident in his voice. We're colleagues. Friends, I thought. We are, I confirmed, ignoring the way Alexander's head snapped around at those words. I'll see you tomorrow. I ended the call, feeling Alexander's gaze boring into me. Tomorrow, he questioned. You're still planning to go to work? After this? I met his eyes steadily. Someone just tried to set me up to destroy our marriage for corporate gain. And your first concern is still whether I'll return to my job. The question hung between us, crystallizing every issue in our relationship. Kate squeezed my shoulder. I'll wait outside, she murmured, giving us privacy for whatever came next. When the door closed behind her, Alexander and I faced each other across a chasm far wider than the cafe table between us. I thought I was protecting you, he said finally. From people like Vincent, from a world that would use you to get to me. I thought I could keep you safe by keeping you close. By controlling me, I corrected gently. By making me dependent on you. Alexander didn't deny it. I've spent my life acquiring things, building walls, creating security. When something matters to me, my instinct is to lock it away where nothing can touch it. I'm not a thing, Alexander. My voice broke slightly. And love doesn't work that way. You can't protect a relationship by smothering it. He reached across the table, palm up, an invitation, not a demand. After a moment's hesitation, I placed my hand in his. When I saw you laugh at his joke today, Alexander admitted, I saw a future where you realized you didn't need me. Where all I had to offer was money, power, things that never impressed you anyway. And I panicked. The vulnerability in his confession struck deeper than any grand gesture ever had. I do need you, I said softly. But not as my owner or my protector. I need you as my partner. And the job? Your independence. A non-negotiable, I stated firmly. If we're going to have a future together, it has to be as equals. Different, but equals. Alexander was silent for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. Finally, he looked up, those blue eyes clear in a way they hadn't been all day. I don't know how to do that, he admitted. But I want to learn. It wasn't a perfect answer. It wasn't a guarantee. But it was honest, perhaps the most honest Alexander had ever been with me, or with himself. Then let's learn together, I said, standing and gathering my things. Starting tonight. You're coming home. Relief softened his features. On one condition. I held his gaze steadily. Tomorrow morning, you come to my office. Meet my team properly. See the work I do, the person I am there. Try to understand that part of me instead of fearing it. Alexander hesitated, then nodded. And Colin? Is my colleague, I said firmly. Nothing more, nothing less. But I won't quit, and I won't stop working with him because of your jealousy. That's another non-negotiable. You drive a hard bargain, Mrs. Blackwood, Alexander said, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. I learned from the best, Mr. Blackwood. As we stepped outside into the evening air, Kate waited by the curb, concern etched on her face. Alexander extended his hand to her, a peace offering. Thank you for being there for her, he said formally. She's lucky to have a sister like you. Kate's eyebrows rose in surprise, but she accepted his handshake. Just remember, she warned, I'll always be watching out for her. Billionaire husband or not. Alexander nodded, accepting this as his due. I would expect nothing less. As we walked toward Alexander's waiting car, his hand found mine, our fingers intertwining. The possessiveness was still there in his touch, but tempered now with something else, respect, perhaps. The beginning of understanding. We had a long road ahead, trust to rebuild, boundaries to establish, a marriage to redefine. Vincent's schemes would need to be addressed. Alexander's controlling instincts wouldn't disappear overnight. But as I leaned my head against my husband's shoulder, feeling the solid strength of him beside me, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: true love isn't about possession or control or even passion. It's about choice. Choosing each other, every day, not because we have to, but because we want to. That afternoon, when I giggled at my coworker's silly endearment, I couldn't have imagined how it would shake the foundations of my life. But standing here now, at the beginning of a new chapter with the man I chose, and who was finally learning how to truly choose me back, I wouldn't change a thing. Sometimes it takes nearly losing everything to discover what was real all along. And that's the end of our story. Did you expect that twist with Alexander's stepbrother? I hope you enjoyed this emotional journey through love, power, and the struggle for independence within a relationship. What do you think? Will Alexander truly change? Was our protagonist right to give him another chance? I'd absolutely love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe for more dramatic tales of love, betrayal, and redemption. Your support means everything to me, and I can't wait to share more stories with you all. Thank you so much for reading. Red Heart Hash.